Okay. Let's look. This is the main part what I wanted to focus on, especially in this country. Why exactly do we need to talk about in probably in Pakistan or India or Bangladesh or any other country, rules are kind of standard. But in this country, if we don't specify few things in our will or testament, government will take over, and they have their default rules and they will execute it, and we have no say. So what are the common things that happen if you don't have a will? What people have suffered because of not having a will? This is the list that I have partially. That's going to be a long list, but I just put a few of them here. So what happens is, if the government wants, they can conduct a post-mortem autopsy or embalmment to your body. They'll just cut down your body and see what was the cause and all those things, and they'll rip your body apart. And it is very bad thing. In Islam, this is not allowed unless it is extremely necessary for capital punishment or criminal investigation. Otherwise, you have a right. You can say, I do not want autopsy to be performed on myself. If you don't mention it in your will, your government can do whatever they want. So that's again very important. So this is mainly, you can specify as a priority that Islam has these recommendations, so I am overriding government's rules to come over that. So that's one area. So burial, this is another way. So in this country, the way the burial is performed, obviously, it's not an Islamic way of doing it. So you can mention that I want to be buried according to the Islamic way, right? We covered this in a lot of detail when we talked about the janaza, the fiqh of janaza, right? So there are a lot of steps that needs to be done, how the kafan needs to be bought, and how many kafan we should use, how the bath should be given. There are a lot of steps. So you can specify those things in the burial as well. And also, sometimes they do embalmment. Sometimes they keep your body in mortuary or in freezer, and it will be there in like 3-4 days or whatever, whenever they decide it's time for burial. But in Islam, we know that as soon as you die, you should hurry up and bury your loved one as soon as possible. That is very highly recommended act that we should do. So you can specify that in your will. If I die, I want to be buried very quickly, very soon. Otherwise, government will do according to whenever they think it's appropriate. And again, this is very important, brothers and sisters, guardianship of children in this country. So most of us, like, we don't have a lot of relatives here, and it is seen many times that many brothers and sisters, for example, they are driving on a highway and they are involved in a car accident, and husband and wife both die, and children are left behind. What happens to those children? Who takes care of them? The state takes care of them. Even though you have a lot of relatives, perhaps most of them are back home, the state will just take those kids and they put those kids in foster home, or they'll open for adoption or Christian homes. So your Muslim kids go into Christian homes, and it's all messed up. So that's what happens. So that's why we have to be very careful. And you can specify in your will that, okay, if I die, so and so person lives back home, this is the address, or this is the name, this is telephone, this is email. You can specify like 5-6 people. If he's dead, next person, third person. So you have very good steps of doing it. And also, sometimes it's just not about your relatives taking care of your children. Sometimes what happens is that, for example, husband and wife die in a car accident. Okay, fine. Then the government says, okay, this guy didn't have a will, but he has a brother. The father had, the person who died, he has a brother. He's in United States. Okay, let's give it to him. But you knew that this brother of yours, he is not a good Muslim, right? He is probably he drinks and he gambles, things like that. You don't want your children to go to that relative. You know that. Even though he's your brother, you want your children to be raised in a nice way. So you can specify in your will, I don't want my children to go to my brother, but go to my so-and-so sister or uncle or whatever. So that is again very important. So we should plan for such things. And may Allah protect our children, and may Allah protect our spouses and husbands. But we have to really think forward what can happen, and this happens many times, brothers and sisters. We think it's a very small probability, but it's seen many times. Especially if you go in this country, we are so much short on foster homes, Muslim foster homes. But if we don't take care, government will dictate what needs to happen. And also the other thing is the death of the deceased. This is another serious matter that, person usually, what happens is, in Islam, debt is like a very serious thing. If you take debt from people, you have to return it. So many times what happens, if I take debt from people and if I die, nobody knows about this debt and this other person is also not following up, I will be accountable. I will be having very difficult time in my grave, perhaps even punished if my debt is not cleared off. So in your will, you can specify that, hey, I took this much money, please return to this person. So you keep a track and you keep updating your will whenever this amount changes. So that's one thing. And I think I also heard that in this country, if people take like a mortgage, right, in your home, for your home, you buy home, it's a mortgage. If you die, the mortgage debt goes upon the family. Right? It goes upon the family. The family takes the burden of it. That's not fair. Islamically, that's not fair. I mean, why should your family face the burden of your debt? So that's, again, you can specify in very detail how exactly you want your state to handle it. And distribution of wealth as well. If you don't have any will, even though you say, hey, Quran says give so much to son, daughter, and your mother, father, it has all the rules, but if you don't have a will, usually Islamic will doesn't contain these percentages, because we all know it's defined in Quran and Sunnah, but in this country, they don't really care about what Quran says. So what happens is, if you don't write this will, government will say, we have our own rules, we know how much a wife should get, and how much a son should get, how much your father should get. Father and mother perhaps won't get anything. It depends on state laws. So you can prevent un-Islamic distribution of wealth if you have wasiyyah. That's the thing. Government will say whatever we decide is good, but you can override that, and government will respect your will, whatever you write. And for example, if you don't have any relatives, what happens in this country? If you don't have any relatives, Uncle Sam becomes your relative. The government will take away all your wealth, even if you have a lot of relatives back home or in other countries. That's the reason government is not going to search whether your relative is in Hawaii or Alaska or Bangladesh or India or Pakistan. They're not going to search. They'll just see in this country it's not there. Khalas, that's it. That Uncle Sam is your relative and he takes everything. And then another thing is that very scary part, you leave a lot of wealth, and then it's the time of distribution, and there are ways by which what happens is, actually, when you distribute this wealth, there is something called inheritance tax in this country. It's very, very high. So government just takes away, I don't know what the percentage is, but I heard that it is very high. You have to give government some percentage. So that's why it is so highly recommended for us that we consult a lawyer. Lawyer has very smart techniques of how to reduce this inheritance tax. You don't want your money to be given to government, is it not? So there are many ways. That's why in this country it gets a little complicated. So you're not going to cheat the government, but the lawyer will tell you that if you do this, this, and this, you can make sure that most of your property and assets will go to your family members rather than the government. So that's why it is very essential. And sometimes we even saw, like, what happened is, some people are not really careful about the legal aspect. So if they get married, they go to masjid and perform nikah, and okay, you're married. They don't really care about the paperwork. And when it's the time for distribution of wealth, the government is you are not registered, your marriage is not registered with the state, so we're not going to give anything. Even though you show the document in the masjid that, hey, we got married, look, that they're not going to accept it. So these are the things. Islamically, you are recognized, your marriage is recognized, but because you didn't have the paperwork with the government, the wife is denied basically. So that's the problem. And there are a lot of rules, again, distribution of wealth, who can get and who cannot get. We'll get into it. So that basically makes sure that a person who's not qualified doesn't get. Some relatives, by the way, are not qualified to get inheritance or your money, and we will see that, inshallah.